One of my mentors who I've been going to every seminar he puts on, Dr. Jeffrey Bland, he's a biochemist who's internationally recognized as being the lead singer in all of functional medicine. In fact, you can consider him the father of functional medicine. And he was telling us a story on Saturday, which perked up in mind. He says, because I met this young fella who was incredibly bright. Dr. Jeffrey Bland is the brightest man I know. So for him to say that is quite something. He said, this young man, when we first met, was in the doldrums because he had flunked out of high school, was in the army, and didn't know where to go. He had gotten some sort of honorable discharge due to a leg injury, the Army came in and had him do the questionnaire to see where his strengths would lie. And in the math section, he absolutely aced it. Got 0 wrong. This is without a formal education. And they said, well, the Army personnel came on and said, how did you possibly do that? No one's ever done that in this country, ever. And we've given this test for decades. So, he said, I don't know, I just did it. And so obviously this man had an incredible leaning towards math. Went back, got his PhD in mathematics in a record time of just 6 years. Remember, he hadn't even graduated from high school. And developed a bunch of theorems on how complex things can interact with each other. So this part of calculus has not even been figured out yet, and he's the one that just figured it out all by himself, has written multiple papers on it. In fact, if you're a scientist and you get one of your papers published in Nature, which is a very, very large journal that's very well recognized internationally, you've made it. That's it. You're internationally recognized. You've got your article in there. Just 2 months ago, he had 4 articles in there. Okay, so this young man has been incredible. He's been hired by one of our top pharmaceutical companies, Upjohn. And he was able to figure out how things interact disease-wise. And I'm going to show you, do we have a slide of that coming up? Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe we do, maybe we don't. How everything interacts with each other, and there is no separate thing. For example, your pancreas producing insulin affects things like inflammation in your gut, and your gut affects serotonin levels. This is a new finding. Serotonin levels is a neurotransmitter which affects your moods. Serotonin levels also affects gut contractility, so it might cause irritable bowel syndrome. That irritable bowel syndrome has been linked to osteoporosis. In fact, it can be the cause of osteoporosis, a finding just from a few months ago. Serotonin levels seems to be the trigger for bone building and bone loss, something a year ago we had no idea about. All of that is interconnected. It's not separate issues. It's not just about calcium. See, it can be very complex. And he developed all these things, that how they interact with each other, and was able to predict where things go. So he's been publishing this, and the pharmaceutical CEO started asking himself, well, what does this mean for our one pill, one symptom methodology? It blows it apart. The era of one pill, one symptom is over. It is over. And it no longer works. It is why our healthcare system is in the crisis it is. And it will not be fixed, not even by Obama. Unless we weren't supposed to have that. It will not be fixed unless the fundamentals of the way we deliver healthcare system, the way we think about it, gets changed. And that's what we're going to talk about. How can we change it? There's incredible research, incredible minds. But again, why aren't these smart doctors looking at this? The research we heard in the past month and are incorporating as we speak into the practice gets incorporated by not even 1% of doctors out there. What did he say? What was the percentage? It was really low. It was less than point-something%. So what's going on? And it's very simple. If you don't look for it, you're not going to see it. Here's a guy example. If you buy a red Chevy, small red Chevy, and you go driving down the road, I'm seeing that red Chevy all over the place. And you didn't even notice any of them before. None. You weren't looking for it. All of a sudden you're seeing it. I know that's a guy example, but there's another one. And I got shown a YouTube video that we're going to show you tonight, but we can't get it up and rolling. But here it goes. There was two basketball teams, and they're passing the ball back and forth. A black t-shirt team and a white t-shirt team. And you have to count how many times you got passed between the white players. Very simple. So there it goes for a minute. They're passing it back and forth, and I'm busy counting. 13. So tape gets stopped, or I'm a dinosaur. Tape gets stopped. The computer gets stopped, and they said, okay, how many times does it pass? I said, 13. And I was right. But did you see the moonwalking bear in the background? No. Play the DVD again, or play the YouTube again, and right through the middle of the players, this giant bear just moonwalking back and forth, going all kinds of crazy things. Missed him completely. Totally missed him. And that was such a wake-up call for me, because I was so busy looking for the passes. Didn't even see the bear. The bear was huge. It was a guy with a costume on. So, and really, that's why this type of medicine is not yet fully embraced. We're looking in the back mirror. We're looking backwards at what's worked before. But you know what? Our knowledge is exploding right now. It is absolutely exploding. Every 2 years, medical knowledge, health knowledge is doubling. That's why we're scrambling. That's why, oh, Dr. Dunmore's on vacation again. We're at a seminar trying to keep up with it, all this new stuff. Because from my education 20 years ago, only 6% of it is still applicable and true. Only 6% of it is. If I had just stopped educating myself right then, I truly would be a total dinosaur. The only thing that's remained the same is this muscle, and this thyroid is a thyroid. Yeah? But the function of it has totally changed, and it is absolutely phenomenal, the knowledge that we're accumulating, and also how we have to apply it. So most of medicine here is still applying the old model, looking in the back mirror. But folks, today, let's look forward. Let's start looking forward instead of looking backward, and let's see how we can apply this stuff for your health and also others that you tell them about. So maybe you should try this or try that. So let's roll this thing. Do we have a remote? Okay. Dr. Stacy's going to take over.
Yes. So your book of life. When we sperm and egg join, we get 23 chapters. Dr. Bland has this on his refrigerator to remind him of where he came from. We all giggle at it, but it's so true. This is basically what we all start with. This is what all of our DNA encodes and then wraps around. And this is what we have. So we have the option to make this constantly replicate better or replicate worse. So one of the greatest, I think, quotes that I've ever heard him say is, our gene pool is very unstable. There is no lifeguard. That's so true. There's nobody there to pull us out. So what we look at here is, we're going to talk a lot tonight about how do we keep things healthy? Where are we going forward? How do we get out of this chronic disease that we're going down the road for? He was also talking about that the healthcare bill alone for last year was $2.43 trillion. That's ridiculous. That's a lot of money that we've spent towards healthcare that we could be spending on ourselves for fun and relaxation and food instead of on money to keep ourselves healthy or because we've already gotten in crisis mode. So Dr. Denford and I tonight are going to discuss how do we get out of that? Where do we go? How do we prevent it?
Okay, so comprehensive lifestyle changes significantly increases telomerase activity and consequently telomerase maintenance capacity in human immune system cells. Lancet, our own famous medical journal, has published this late last year, And telomerase activity is really the maintenance people of genetic expression. Telomerase, you're born with a certain length, and when that little telomerase rod is about that big, cell function drops, cells die, ultimately death results. We used to think that this was pre-programmed. If it was programmed for 80 years, that's as long as it would go. 6 years, that's as long as it would go. Now we know that through what we do in life, we can speed up the degeneration of it, or we can slow it down. We can't stop it. We cannot stop it. So it is incredible how in laboratories we've been able to extend telomerase life by 40%. Does that translate to human life? Don't know. It's not about life extension though, it's about extending functional life, and that's what we're going to be talking about here. Because there's too many people who maybe died at 70, but on a tombstone it should have said died at age 30, because the last 40 years of life was spent in disability, bad moods, chronic inflammation, and really not a true functional life. Now, I know I'm being a little extreme here, but you get where I'm coming at. What we're talking about is functional life. Significant lifestyle changes significantly increases telomerase activity. This is a very important study that has come out. It basically says that we do have control over some of the issues that affect us as far as our health goes.
Sorry, I'm still working, didn't I?
Yeah, that's fine.
I walked away.
You want me to go with this one?
Yep.
Okay.
That means,
This is a new one. That original research was done in France. And this is metoproteinase 13, MMP13 for short, obviously. And this is one of the things that extends life's activity. This is a fascinating one, because MMP13 is almost like an enzyme, a digestive enzyme-like activity that supports cartilage, ligaments, tendons, and soft tissue. And we used to think that once you stretched the ligament, degenerated your cartilage, say in your knee, that was it. There's not much we could do about it. We had some fascinating studies come from about 25 years ago coming out of Italy that showed that glucosamine sulfate, a natural product, could bring back some cartilage function, but it really does it by bringing water into the cartilage, smoothing out the rough edges, and really making the joint more fluid, more lubricated. Glucosamine sulfate we've utilized here for 2 decades with incredible results. But we could never quite fix ligaments and tendons and totally restore cartilage. We can now by activating this MMP13. It's called Tissue Flex here. It's very new. It's very late breaking, and wow, what a difference it makes for some very interesting things, including, as you can see, inflammatory bowel disease. It's a soft tissue. It's a soft tissue. Periodontitis. It's another soft tissue. I have seen patients that have been totally debilitated by severe car wrecks with multiple metal plates all over their body. One of my patients I'm talking about right now. On high dose of Vicodin for 9 months, not responding to any therapy. Comes hobbling in. I put her on Tissue Flex, fish oil, and that's it. And you know, in 2 days, she's off Vicodin. 2 days. That's the power of the human body. We're not blocking anything. We're promoting good things here. Difference between a nutrient and a drug. We are not blocking something. We're just activating MMP13. It is absolutely phenomenal how frozen shoulders come back with it. I am so excited about this, and I'm just going, I wish I'd had this for all these years, but we have it now. So that is a very new finding, and we're finding more and more different uses for it. I'm going out on a limb here, but I think that it may also have the ability to fight cancer. If you study the mechanism of it, and maybe a year, maybe 2 years from now, I will be able to stand in front of you and say, we've got something that really effectively goes after breast cancer, and it'll be a substance that's very close to this. I know there's ongoing research in the topic, and it makes total sense. But that's way ahead of where we're at right now. We know this is what it can do, and wow, what a weapon. But you know, you don't want to be a green pharmacist. A green pharmacist is not changing the way we think. It's the same old medical model. Instead of Tylenol or Vicodin, use this. So you're trading one thing for another. No side effects? Sure. More effective? Wonderful. But still, you still have to go, what happened in the first place? Why is this patient experiencing what they're doing? Otherwise, it's going to have another effect somewhere else. Does that make sense? Remember, everything is very interconnected.
Remember that the MMP13 was originally developed for chiropractors who were having patients that, after they adjusted them and they went through their normal protocols of stretching, exercise, diet, that they just weren't getting better. They had to keep coming in more often than what was recommended. And they had come about that, they would give them the tissue flex an hour before they would get adjusted, and they find that their adjustment would hold longer and their body would heal.
7 times as long.
Yeah, and it would help them get past that next plateau. So then you can reach to the higher level of health and keep moving forward instead of struggling and being in the background.
Yeah. And it really is, if you study European research, it really comes from the extracellular matrix. The extracellular matrix is all the soft tissues, ligaments, tendons that bind us together. It goes around our organs, goes into our legs, around our knees. It just is one big structure that holds us together along with our skeleton. And it used to be interesting. We had nice names for it all. But research in the last decade has shown that it is an incredible conduit for information. Who would have thought? It's an incredible conduit for information. In fact, it might be just as important as the nervous system. Information is zipping back and forth at speeds that we can't understand, faster than neurological impulses. And now we're figuring out that physical therapy, the chiropractic adjustment, acupuncture, soft tissue massage, such as Rolfing, all work by affecting this extracellular matrix, somehow making it send a signal into the body, having somehow a systemic effect. This is how acupuncture works. Research is really active in it right now, but it makes sense because when you adjust someone, you're stretching a certain part of the extracellular matrix, sending a signal to the nerve then goes to business, and yes, that's why when we're adjusting somebody for menstrual cramps, while they're on the table, the menstrual cramps are gone. Yeah? This is why if somebody comes in with a headache, you can adjust it much better, it's gone. And we hear it so often, it's almost, well, we expect it, well, yeah, hello, but to the patient who experiences it for the first time, it's phenomenal. Yeah? It's the extracellular matrix. Very ongoing. In Europe, we call this the ground substance. And tissue flex is the first of this whole new way of thinking about the human body to come into being.
Sure.
No. This is revolutionary.
Yeah, this talks that what we're going into next is still we're covering some kinases, and the MMP13 is one of the kinases, and they're just starting to do some wonderful research about osteoporosis. Finally, ladies have an option to seeing what's going on with our bones, why are we losing bones. So this is what's been going on. They're looking at the mechanism of disease. Is osteoporosis actually like an obesity of bone? Are we replacing bone cells with fat? So is it getting fatty and mushy? So one of the reasons that they're stating that we're losing bone and we're getting fatty bone is due to some of the serotonin effects, our hormone effects. Why do women lose the most bone as they go into osteoporosis up to a couple years before osteoporosis, menopause, and then up to 5 years into menopause? And it's because of our downtrodden, they thought of the estrogen, but they never looked at what else was going on. What's the vitamin D connection in here? And they're seeing that vitamin D now can be your modulator for how much calcium you get. Well, we're really in trouble in Michigan. 6 months out of the year, we're losing a lot of our bone because we don't have enough vitamin D, and we really don't know what that vitamin D level has to be at to push the calcium in the bone instead of take it out. So one of the kinases they're studying is how to build that matrix of bone. As you see in the background here, this is actually bone, highly magnified, and this is an osteoporotic bone. should be much thicker with much smaller holes. So what they're saying is that if you can build the matrix, the calcium, the vitamin D, the vitamin K, the boron, all those things that are known to build bone can actually help build that bone strength and ability.
It has something to stand on.
Yeah. Instead, I mean, you don't have much to stand on these little, think of chalk. You push chalk against the chalkboard and a lot of times the long stick will break. That's exactly what's going on with the longer bones of our body.
Yeah. It's really interesting because last year in University of Groningen, that's in my home country, they published, and I thought of this immediately as this information was presented, they found that with serotonin reuptake inhibitors, in other words, those that block serotonin, which are antidepressants, Prozac is a real common one, but there's many of them, they found that it causes irritable bowel syndrome. And that's very important because 80% of our serotonin levels are in our bowel. It's used for contraction. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter, I should have qualified that. So we always think of serotonin as our happy neurotransmitter, but it's used for contraction of your bowel mainly, 80% of it. So because we're blocking it here, it's also blocking it here, causing irritable bowel syndrome within 9 months. Irritable bowel syndrome, we know, causes depression. So now all of a sudden we're aggravating depression. But what's even worse, the serotonin levels being altered affects bone formation, which we didn't know about until just now, because serotonin also stimulates bone formation through osteoblastic activity. Yeah? Osteoblasts is the cells that build bone. So you see, all of a sudden, you have all these unwanted effects from blocking something. And that's why the one pill, one symptom deal is no longer working. As our knowledge is exploding about how everything is so interconnected, we're seeing how much harm we are doing with the pharmaceuticals. It doesn't work anymore, folks. And that's why your health premium might be $8,000 a year. Because we're supporting the pharmaceutical industry, we're not supporting health. That's what we are doing. We're not thinking of it this way. So, very powerful. This is new technology that we're going to really scramble to put to use immediately so that we can get this very important piece of the missing puzzle back. We should be able to easily beat any pharmaceutical that's on the market as far as bone building. Nor would you want to use that anyway, because how does that work? It works by blocking bone breakdown. Yeah? You think, well, that's a good thing. It's not. Those drugs block bone breakdown, and bone building continues on in. What's happening is the old bone that's supposed to be flushed out so you can keep on pushing in new bone to keep your bones young, it's not happening. So you're just accumulating more and more old bone. Chalk, essentially. So you've got dense bones now. Looks great, doctor says. You bet you gain another 3% this year. Awesome. Let's do a bone strength test on that. And you'll find you're much more fragile, you're chalk-like, and you're much more prone to hip fractures. Just read the studies. Are there studies beyond 1 year for bone fracture on these drugs? No, not at all. Why? It's because they're worse. You have a higher incidence of hip fracture with patients on medications versus those that are doing nothing.
And side effects are terrible.
Side effects are terrible. 23% follow through after just 1 year. That means almost 70% dropped out. Yeah, for good reason, gastrointestinal upset. So,
the PDR, in reference to that, the physician's desk reference, which is the big reference of all the medications that we have, looking back through that, you'll find inhibitors, you'll find blockers, and that is the majority. Actually, isn't that all that's in there? Is there anything that builds? All of those in there, the greatest majority, are going to be inhibitors or blockers. Why do we try to inhibit and block everything? The body doesn't inhibit or block unless it needs to wall off with white blood cells. And it's not meant to do that for long periods of time. And that's what we've been trying to do with our bodies for a long time.
So ultimately with bone, again, does that make calcium not important? No, of course. It's still the building block. Vitamin D, critical. But now we've got the last missing component. We feel it's the last missing component called serotonin. And identifying duodenum-derived serotonin as a hormone inhibiting bone formation is in the lipoprotein receptor. Well, I don't need to go into that. But it broadens our understanding of what's going on. Now we feel that we have the last piece of the puzzle that we never knew about. Now, this is very connected to some other things, and I'm going to pull a quick thing that I just found out. Oh, got it right here in my hand. Obese kids found to have arteries of 45-year-olds. Just got published. And this is, obese kids is 1/3 of our nation at this point. We expect that 1/3 of our nation will be diabetic within about 20 years. So this is why this has become a crisis. This obesity is due to what? It's basically lack of activity, perhaps. It's multifactorial, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because that's another part of the chronic disease is obesity. But one of them is POP. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. There's POP. Well, I don't have to go there, but 3-4 pops a day is not uncommon for a lot of these kids. It does create obesity. And all this refined sugar is creating a huge inflammatory response, making their arteries look like a 45-year-old by the time they're 8 years old. Okay, and this is very common. But what's also happening, this high sugar level is causing an insulin rise. That's why we're seeing this upcoming epidemic. And the high insulin rise is very inflammatory. And this inflammation hits the bones. And the bones become very weakened by this inflammation. So inflammation is also another factor in osteoporosis. We expect an epidemic of osteoporosis in 35-year-olds in today's kids. So again, in about 10 to 20 years, we expect to see osteoporosis in 35-year-olds. It will happen, because it's already being measured today. So it's very sad, and that's why this new research, I think, is so important.
Now we should move on to diet, because I think that segues nicely. So as we talking about obese children and insulin resistance, and metabolic syndrome is another word for it, syndrome X, whatever you want to call it, it all means the same thing. It means lack of signaling to your insulin receptors, not allowing the glucose to rush into the cell, to give us the energy that we need to go through whatever that cell function is, whether it's just for ATP, for energy, is it working on bringing out hormones, immune function. The nice thing about this slide is it talks about the triad of metabolic syndrome. And the triad is really abdominal obesity, elevated blood pressure, and pro-inflammatory state. The other things just tend to show up after that. Insulin resistance was there to bring on the abdominal obesity. The elevated blood pressure was brought on by the prosthrombic state, but we don't notice it until the elevated blood pressure comes out. The pro-inflammatory state comes on with apogenic dyslipidemia. This is high cholesterol and balanced cholesterol numbers, so if you have a high LDL, high triglycerides, that is what's showing up. So metabolic syndrome is, unfortunately, probably one of the leading health problems that we're dealing with in the United States. Let's face it, we're an overweight nation, we're the heaviest nation, and we're the sickest. Let's work on it. So, dealing with this, you have to look at everything that can be affected by metabolic syndrome. Remember how we talk about in functional medicine there's a web. Everything is interconnected. Well, with metabolic syndrome, it can create all of these symptoms that go on here. Cognitive decline is one of the things that you see a lot. Somebody who has metabolic syndrome will start to see blood sugar changes throughout the day. This tends to be a classic case is we start to get tired around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Want to take that mid-afternoon nap, but we really need to keep going. That's one of the things. And when we start to have blood sugar regulation, we have a hard time really staying on track, putting our day in order, or we just forget things very simple. PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. This is usually not diagnosed until late stages when a woman has a lot of pain in the uterine area during periods. It can also just happen when we start to see excessive flow. With men, there is erectile dysfunction that can show up with metabolic syndrome. Obviously, everybody knows about the cardiovascular diseases. Seems to be associated with more of the abdominal visceral fat. Dyslipidemia, abnormal blood cholesterol, hypertension, sorry that got knocked off a little bit. Osteoporosis. Notice that's on there with metabolic syndrome. Fat, bone. Obesity, sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is very, very misunderstood. I would dare say in the medical community, it's just don't know how to fix it. We just get a CPAP machine and go from there.
It's not a CPAP deficiency, folks. It isn't.
Not at all.
No.
Has a lot to do with how your body is regulating blood flow. If you're getting enough oxygen in your system. And sleep apnea means we have to, at night is when the time that you heal. When you sleep, you heal. So those of us that cut our sleep time short, we're also cutting our body's time of healing. So it's important to have a healthy sleep cycle. When the sleep cycle is off, we're letting ourselves go into that preemptive state of metabolic syndrome.
Metabolic syndrome is huge, and it seems to have its fingers into everything. And I can't say enough about it, except when we put our patients in lifestyle therapy to change the way they're eating, the way they're exercising, the way they're dealing with stress, the way they're sleeping, and just really incorporating all the things that we know affected. Blood pressure pills get dumped. Their cholesterol pills get dumped. Their foot problems that they might have due to too much weight, no more orthotics. I can just go on and on what it all does. Rashes disappear. Chronic allergies disappear. It's all connected to all this insidious inflammation. All of a sudden, their moods improve tremendously. And it can all happen, and you can feel it happen in a matter of just a few months. It doesn't take a lifetime to change these things. So that's always really encouraging. So autoimmune disorders is on the rise. It's become an epidemic. We feel it's getting to be close to 80% of all disorders now. We have well over 100 at last count. When I was going to school, there was 8. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing how it's just exploding. Eczema, it's an autoimmune disorder. Crohn's, that's a classic one. MS, Parkinson's. There's so much of it out there. Alzheimer's, diabetes, all these are autoimmune disorders. And why are they on the rise? Why is it just exploding? And why aren't doctors doing much about it? Well, it's because one of the reasons is only 10 to 20% of medical education gets spent on chronic disease. Most of it's on acute disorders. And you know what? We're very good at it. Yeah, we're very good at it. But again, 80% of our disorders are chronic. So we're finding that we have a very interesting phenomena that's common to all autoimmune disorders, whether it's eczema, or diabetes, or Crohn's, or MS, Parkinson's, and that commonality is a Th2, this is a white blood cell, predominance. It's an imbalance in the immune system. We have different T cells. You might have heard of T cells. They're white blood cells that are fighters. T1 is good for bacterial infection. T2 is more viral. Bacterial and viral is T1. We have anti-tumor. We have just all these different T cells. There's T3, T4, T5. T2 is the one that recognizes environment. And we have found that if T2 gets too high, then all of a sudden it hits a certain area up here, that it becomes what we call self-propagating. It spins out of control. There's nothing to break it down to normal levels anymore. And it starts spiraling upwards, depressing all the other ones. You become more prone to catching cancer, bacterial infections, viral infections. This T2 disorder is very, very prominent in autoimmune disorders, and we now have ways to get it back down to normal. In this office, it's just utilizing something called perilla seed. Paramin is the trade name. It's been in use for thousands of years in China. Thousands of years. They know it's good for asthma, they know it's good for eczema, they know it's good for chronic inflammatory conditions. The Japanese, about 12 years ago, started researching it, figuring out how did this work. They figured out it suppresses T2 cells to normal levels, and once it's normal, everything is normalized. And it's now known as a drug in Europe because they can patent drugs that are natural substances. Here you can't, luckily, and it's just a natural supplement over here. This is a huge weapon in the fight against autoimmune diseases. But now we also know that we can utilize fish oils to help normalize inflammation as well. And we utilize between 3 and 8 grams of EPA a day, EPA being the most effective by far. I know there's a lot of EPA DHA out there. Ours is an Australian product because there they have put a special coating on it so it gets released right where I want it. And it's called Max EPA here. Our data shows for the first time that the prevalence of autoimmune disorders and celiac disease, gluten sensitivity, is related to the duration of exposure to gluten. Want to hit that one?
The easiest way to really explain how this is something that I would say I would learn from my own experience. And it's not like, mine would not be the gluten, mine would be the dairy. My parents found out when I was very young that I was a colic baby, and I could not tolerate milk. Well, as all parents do, they tried it again, I seemed to tolerate it better, and said, oh, I just grew out of it. Well, as I got older, my hormone cycles were bad, I had bad breakouts, I would double over. On the first 2 days of my cycle, I couldn't go to school. I spent all my day like this over my bed, or like this over my bed, trying to figure out the most comfortable thing to do. Nothing touched it. Ibuprofen didn't hit it. And the longer that I had this problem, the less the symptoms showed up. The more I ate dairy, the less the symptoms showed up. Ice cream was always bad because it always gave me a headache. Well, took myself off dairy. Everything cleared up. My hormone cycles got better. My face got better. My mood improved. Oh my gosh, my parents were excited about that. I was the bear. And then I found out after I reintroduced it, I thought, well, let's try it. Let's really see if this was truly the problem. I was doubled over in pain for 2 hours. Like somebody was stabbing me in the gut every 30 seconds as it moved through my gut. And I was like, okay, how long is this going to take to heal? I've eaten it over 30 years. How long do you think it would heal? My cells don't heal overnight. My intestinal tract was chronically inflamed. So same thing here. And this is one of the reasons that I'm a stickler with my moms during their pregnancy and what they feed their children. That I believe the first 2 years, if you hold them off gluten, you're better off to have a healthier child. Because I know that if I can keep the gut healthy for the first couple years of life, if we add the gluten in when it's the time where we have the most digestive enzymes, the best bacteria in there, you're less likely to have this gluten sensitivity show up. Whereas if we start it too early, like I was started on milk, that my gut never got a chance to proliferate and grow and be healthy. So same thing is going on here. The longer that we're exposed to it, sometimes the sensitivity doesn't show up until you take it out. And then it comes back with a vengeance for some.
72% of us carry the gene for gluten sensitivity. That was released just a couple of years ago. 72% of us. And given the right circumstance, the right stresses, the antibiotics, for instance, or some sort of pharmaceuticals, or a stress in life, that can activate that gene, and all of a sudden you've got issues with it. And what is a classic sign of gluten sensitivity? Well, gut disorders is one of them. And gut seems to relate to everything. But for a lot of other people, it's something neurological. It's considered a neurotoxin. Bad moods, like you explained. Bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, ADD, those types of things. A really interesting, very small study was published not that long ago, 2-3 years ago, on unexplained paralysis. We're talking no limb function from here on down. I've gone through every test. There was 25 cases of these. No, not able to walk, wheelchair bound. Some of them had lost bladder as well as colon function. Nobody could figure out what was going on. These were all adults. On a whim, one of the researchers bless her, took them all off of gluten for 3 months. 24 of the 25 were getting full function. Phenomenal. It was published in one of our medical journals. 24 of the 25. A later examination, we found out the 25th cheated. Yeah. And it's extremely small study, I know, but it's unbelievable data. It was acting as a neurotoxin. Now remember, this is a very special select group. Everything else has been ruled out. You can't go to somebody who's in a wheelchair and say, hey, you should be off of gluten. No, you can't do that. But everything else has been excluded. But look at the power of this food and how it was just destroying neurons. Yeah? And I'm seeing that. We're seeing some really wounded people in here. They're walking wounded. They walk in struggling with emotional disorders that is totally wrecking their lives and those around them. If you can take them off of gluten and totally clear it up, wow. You become a pretty fast convert when you see that. For some people, gluten is poison. For a lot of people, dairy is a poison. And that's why Dr. Sadie was saying the first 2 years of life, hey, let's back off. Let's give that gut a chance to really mature so they can truly handle it so that we don't battle that later on sometime later on in life. Yeah. Okay. This one, again, goes into autoimmune diseases and all the different things that could affect it. We now know it's not one thing causing an immune disease. We know genetics plays a role in a lot of them. But remember, genetics only, it's a story of life. That's how Dr. Stacy started us. And in the gene pool, there is no lifeguard. That's why we have to watch over our genes and how they express themselves. And God has given us the opportunity to make our genes express one way or another way. And so genetics, I can guarantee you that almost all of us have genes in us that will lead to autoimmune disease. It's just so prevalent. It's out there. And we've got to stand guard over it. So our dietary environment is huge here. It is absolutely huge. The new foreign to man chemicals that we ingest wreak havoc with our genes. They wreak havoc with it and how they express themselves. NutraSweet, one of them. Red, yellow number 5. Some of the preservatives, trans fats, they don't just alter our genetics, they damage it permanently. Trans fats, why else do we think there's such an uproar about it? It permanently damages your genes, not just your expression. So that is why we should all be sticklers for reading labels. If you see things on the label that you don't understand, chemical words, it's junk. Do not buy it. Do not consume it. It is junk. Yeah? If the label on it has more than 6 or 7 ingredients, it's probably junk. You can follow me around in the store and just look at it, and if it has a list of ingredients this long, don't even bother. Really, don't even bother. Anytime anything is in a package, you have to be suspicious. You have to be very suspicious. And even something that looks as innocuous as oatmeal, still check it out. How close to nature is this stuff? Is this the instant stuff? Well, guess what? It got steamrolled, it got chlorinated. They don't have to put that on the ingredients. It's just, its glycemic index, meaning it gets converted to sugar real quickly, is really high. Convenient, yes. Good for you? No. Steel cut oats. Just plain oats cut in half. That's all it is. Simple. Soak it overnight if you don't have time to make it in the morning, because I don't. And you soak it overnight, you pop it on a pan, microwave, whatever you want to do it, and you've got instant oatmeal done the healthy way. Yeah, it's just a small example, but it's an important one. That's how we have to do it. How close to nature is it? So our environment, it's absolutely huge. Some of our houses are just breathing chemicals. If you have all these cabinets made out of this pressed wood, and it's fairly new, and a new carpet, you're walking into a cesspool of chemicals, formaldehydes. Look at the labels of these cabinets, and it will tell you how much off-gassing is occurring. They are now required by law to give that. Yeah? This wooden floor, I checked the label very carefully because it had a label for off-gassing. It's extremely little. It's extremely small. Barely detectable. This is important because it has an oil on it instead of varnish. Yeah? So, So occupational, obviously your occupation has a lot to do with autoimmune diseases. We are treating currently a patient who's spent his whole life in tool and die, and he comes in looking very old, looking just, he's been propping himself up by being a green pharmacist. And so he's given himself DHEA to try to get his adrenals stimulated. He's doing all kinds of crazy things to keep from getting sick, just huge doses of vitamin C, and he's just trying to get by. So first thing I hear tool and die, first thing we do is check his urine for heavy metals, loaded with heavy metals. His profession, I kind of knew what he was going to be in there. Cadmium and lead, that's what we found. Yeah. So now we put him on a specific heavy metal theory, and after 6 weeks, I dare say half his wrinkles in his face are gone. You know how a smoker come in, he had that really, that smoker's look, I guess, which used to be considered rugged, but really isn't. It's oxidative stress. Gone in just 6 weeks. It's absolutely amazing what you can do if you give the patient a chance. Removing boulders and let God's creation do its thing. The trauma, obviously there's some patients that have a tremendous, I've got a fellow that just comes to me, he's in his early 20s, and he fell out of a 5th-story window and survived. And his hip has moved up tremendously, it's in through there. And it's affecting him neurologically a lot, intestinally. You think that'll affect his autoimmunity at some point? Yes. Hopefully we'll get into it before it does that. We're finding out that certain classes of drugs can go into Parkinson's and MS-like symptoms, even recreational drugs especially. In the 90s there was a real problem out in California where a certain type of subclass of ecstasy that they were using was giving patients Parkinson's, and it is permanent damage, and that's not uncommon at all. Anything to add to that?
70% of our genes are not expressed. Our body has a great ability of hiding what it considers inflammatory, junk, viral, something that shouldn't be expressed. When we expose ourselves to all of these different problems that Dr. Denver just talked about, whether it's our diet, whether it's our lifestyle, whether it's where we work, where we're living, it allows those genes to get expressed. So that's why he said we all have the opportunity to get an autoimmune disorder. It's just our body is doing a wonderful job of keeping it under cover.
Yep. It's ironic that a lot of these genes that keep it under cover used to be called junk DNA. Actually, they still get called that because supposedly it was some evolutionary byproduct, so didn't know what it did. Junk DNA. But we knew that a decade ago when we came across this new finding called junk DNA, that at some point we knew that wouldn't be called junk, and lo and behold, I'm sure they're scrambling right now to try and find another name for it. Yeah. Okay. Therapeutic potential of neurohormetic phytochemicals. Don't you love the words they use? Yeah, it's awesome. It keeps all of us confused. And really, neurohormetic phytochemicals have been found to suppress the disease process related to neurodegenerative diseases. This is a big topic. Neurodegenerative diseases, we all think of Alzheimer's, but it's a huge topic. And we found, this is a new finding, resveratrol, and this is derived from wine, grapes, right? Has a very powerful protective effect. This is a new finding, it's very exciting. The patent to this finding just got bought by one of our major pharmaceutical companies for $700 million, just for the patent on this. I'm sure it'll be a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's not going to work. I can virtually guarantee you that. It's not found in the pill. You can't undo a bad life with a pill. You cannot do it. It will not work. And so I wouldn't put my money into that stock. But that doesn't mean it's not a good adjunct to healthy life. It is a good antioxidant, but you know what? So is broccoli, those Brussels sprouts, blueberries, great. We'll be talking about some of those foods right away. One other food that is really, we have to make a careful note of, we're going to hit this one again, persimmon. Persimmon is a type of a spice, very common in Indian food, and is coming out as the darling of foods because it puts inflammation down in the gut wall very quickly. It's the active component in one of our products called Inflamex that we use for digestive disorders in patients that are inflamed. Persimmon is very powerful. DHIAA, hops. It's a subcomponent of hops. Hotbed of research coming out of Europe mainly, and then us Americans have taken off with this as well. And the extracted hops has found to outperform every single drug that fights inflammation. Every single one of them. The newest trials on this particular extract of hops finds that it decreases inflammatory arthritic joints by 40% after just 1 month of use. The next best drug was 23%. Just got published. Hops. Beer will not do it. Allison, catechins. Catechins. Any idea what that is? Tea. Epigallocatechin gallate is the active component in green tea. Black tea has some catechins also, and it is profound in what it does to protect the nervous system. It's used for meditation in the Asian countries. Green tea is huge, what it can do. Yeah? I picked out, did you have some other comments on that one?
No,
No?
they're gone now. They're just supposed to be managed.
Picked out some interesting foods that most people don't utilize. But I'm gonna hit you with a few foods that should be in your diet and might not be. Beets.
Perfect for this time of year.
It is. Beets are huge as far as capacity to reverse disease. They taste wonderful. They really do. I'm getting laughed at. Boil your beets real briefly. Just take it, put a glove on, otherwise your hands are going to stain. And just take the peel right off. It comes right off, so you don't have to peel because beets are hard to peel. Cut them in half. Throw them on the plate. Broil them in the oven. In between the beets, throw a few carrots. A little bit of maple syrup on it. And watch it go at 350 till they're soft. The carrots and the beets will combine, caramelize, produce natural sugar, so it's a very sweet dish. And it's absolutely delicious with hardly any work. Yes, even your kids will eat it. Extremely potent in antioxidants as well as detoxifying for your liver. Why not utilize it? Beets. Yeah? They keep well in the winter, and we always have to eat the foods that keep well in the winter because you don't want to be eating some skimpy little salad. That's summer stuff. Beets is for the winter. Yeah? Cabbage. Another one of those that gets through hiding a bit. In the Netherlands, you can buy cabbage juice. Why would you want to buy cabbage juice? It's known to get rid of ulcers there. It's known to settle the stomach. Cabbage is huge for normalizing gut function. And isn't the gut connected to virtually everything, including your osteoporosis, your moods, your hormones? The gut is 70% of your immunity. Cabbage is strong medicine for the intestinal wall. Cabbage juice, you don't have to do that, but you can certainly just crunch it all up, stir fry it with some vegetables through it. Bingo, easy, cheap.
Works great in soups.
Works great in soups, yeah. Swiss chard. That's a little bit more of a summer dish. Hard to find right now. Swiss chard is considered one of the top 5 vegetables as far as anti-cancer ability. It is very high in vitamin K. Vitamin K is going to become the buzzword in the press at some point in the next 5 years because we never really did much with vitamin K. There's some very interesting research going on with vitamin K. Cinnamon. University of Maryland a couple of years ago came out with research that shows a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon reduces insulin levels by 30%. All of our diabetic and pre-diabetic patients, I recommend that they do that. Cinnamon. It's cheap, it's effective, works well. Great for sugar modulation. Pomegranate juice. You know, there's a lot of different juices out there. If you're going to get one of them, pomegranate juice would probably be it. Sure, there's acai, and there's this, and there's that. And it seems like there's a new fad coming out every 6 months. And again, one food does not cover it. It's really the whole combination of foods. So don't get sucked into that this is, oh, that made me feel a lot better. You know what? You're going to hear some stories about, I took this and it got rid of my MS. And you know what? It might be true. Don't ever, ever underestimate the placebo effect. Placebo effect is wonderful. It's healing from within. It's not an enemy. It's not to be laughed at. It's good stuff. But don't expect to take that magic juice and get rid of your irritable bowel syndrome. Yeah? It comes from a combination of things. But if you're going to have one juice once in a while, pomegranate juice has been found to increase metabolism quite a bit. It's a very potent antioxidant, and it's yummy. Yeah? Dried plums. This one is, make sure it doesn't have sulfur in it as a preservative. This one is cholesterol lowering, believe it or not. It's got really tremendous fiber in it, and it's really estrogen modulating. In other words, it can get rid of perimenopausal symptoms. Plums.
Little unknown fact about fiber and why it's so important in the diet is it does bind with cholesterol in the gut and doesn't allow it to cross the intestinal barriers so it can get into the bloodstream. So whether we're eating saturated fats or whether your body's making it on its own, the fiber will bind to that and not allow it to get through and raise the cholesterol level.
Yeah. Pumpkin seeds. Sardines has the highest concentration of fish oils in it, by the way. Turmeric. Another one of those Indian spices. Frozen blueberries, my personal favorite. Did 130 pounds from farmer's market this year. Go through probably, personally probably about 1 cup a day. I think I'm going to run out before the blueberries come out again. So, canned pumpkins is that's one of the only canned foods in there that I really want to put in there because most canned foods really lose their value tremendously. Buy frozen. That's why I wanted to put this in there, because when you the flash freezing technology of vegetables is so potent that we can maintain 80% of nutrients in frozen vegetables. Yeah, that's better than the fresh vegetables that are in the market right now, because those have been shipped from long distances and have lost the majority of their value. Frozen vegetables actually outperforms the fresh vegetables right now. Not in the summer, obviously. Canned, you lose a tremendous amount. You really should only have a few cans in your pantry for emergencies. Ran out of vegetables, blah, blah, they've got to do something. Great, you got a can there, use it that one time, but don't make it a habit. Got it? Except for pumpkins. They maintain almost all of their nutrients, and they're rich in nutrients, and they're delicious. So go ahead and use that one without feeling guilty. Here's yours.
A new book that has just been released, The Blue Zones by Dan Buettner. Very quick read, very easy read. He talks about the different areas in the world that have the most centurions in them. So, if you look to the left on the slide, longevity locations in blue zones, that's what they call those with the longest longevity. For some reason they've been called a blue zone. Costa Rica, Japan, Okinawa, which we've known for a long time, Sardinia, and Loma Linda, California. We made it! Somewhere in the United States, we've got something good for us. So what they did in this book is they went around and they talked to each culture. And they interviewed the centurions, and they interviewed the elders, and they went through and they looked at their lifestyle and found certain things that all correlated in each society. And they found that there's 9 different rules here, and sorry, we have them numbered a little chaotic, but if you look at those, that really is 9. So, first one is the 80% rule. They always have a rule that they're only going to eat till they're 80% full. We tend to shovel it in as fast as we can, until we're overfull. So this is one of their keys. But also, looking down the line, you're going to see that they have a lot more vegetables in their diet and less protein. There is on this, they have a website called thebluezones.com, and you can take a quiz after you log in and sign up, and it can tell you how old you are, longevity-wise, of how old you'll live, you know, what your risk factors are, and then it'll go in and give you a vitality support, and it'll tell you which one of these 9 things you can start to change. And it was really cool, because looking at this, the more veggies, less proteins, and processed foods, you know, they really don't give you, you know, how many veggies that they use a day. But they hit every color on the color wheel, and that was really important for them. They also had red wine, consistency and moderation. Every culture had a glass of red wine at night. 1 glass. Deep red. Plan to vida. Know your purpose in life. This one is so underestimated in every population. Every person you talk to, I feel so bad when I talk to somebody who tells me they hate their job, or they hate what they do, and they don't like where they live, because my heart goes out to them. I love what I do. I love where I live. I have a wonderful social network. I have a wonderful church that I belong to, and I feel like another part of my family's there. I live alone, so when I eat every night, I eat by myself. So I make it a priority, at least 1 night a week, to go eat with somebody else. Many times it's at his house. Other times it's with my other friends, and we try to get together and just have family time, because I don't get that. My family lives in Florida. I don't have anybody around to really hang out with that I can consider family, so I've made all of my friend networks as family. So this is one where, you know, I talk to my patients, and I've seen this one make a power of healing more than anything else. I've had patients tell me that they hate their job and they're finally going out to look for a new one. And mind you, obviously these are harder times than what it has been, but I had a young lady switch her job 6 months ago. And within a month, her BIA numbers went through the roof. She changed dramatically just because of the situation and the surroundings that she lives in every day for 8 to 10 hours.
Maybe that explain BIA.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Many of you don't know what a BIA is. It's a bioimpedance analysis. It's what we use to measure body fat and muscle composition. So we look at your body composition in general. It looks at how fast you metabolize, where your water is placed in your body, your hydration level, whether you tend to be more inflamed or you're holding your water more inside the cells, so you're allowing your cells to communicate and be healthy. And it's one of the most powerful tools that we use in the office to see how a patient is doing after they tell us, hey, I'm feeling great. Because it can tell us where's your body at in the next stage of healing. So her BIA numbers, she jumped 3% on muscle mass, dropped 4 on fat, and just overall her status when she walked in, she was proud, she was happy, and she was giggly. And to me that means I found a new person along the path of life that is going to make it even farther than when she first started. Beliefs was another huge one. Spiritual or religious participation. Whether this was going to church or, you know, devotions at night, this is one of their strongest things that keeps them around. I read an article the other day that said people that go to church live on average 7 years longer than those who have no religious affliction. Well, that was wonderful because I'm sorry. Affiliation. Thank you. Affiliation. Will that work better? Oh boy. Don't worry. So, but I thought it was really great because, you know, I see friends and family, and you know, the funniest thing is, you know, I work with a 4-H group, and I see kids grow up, and the kids that go along with their families to church, they'll first go off to college, and they really leave the church because they're feeling out their roots, they're moving around, and then they always come back. And it's wonderful to see all these different things because I know that they're always going to come back and see where they want to be in life. Downshift. I think this one's huge. Work less. We don't do that here. Slow down, rest, and take vacations. Americans are the least likely to take vacations. Do you know how many days a year that we take? Do you remember?
Our average work week is between 43 and 45 hours. So compare that to the Dutch statistic of 32. And we take on average 6 days off besides the normal holidays like Christmas. So 6 additional days. Most of us get more than that, but we choose not to. Pathetic. Yeah, you don't have to be like the Dutchman either and work just 32 hours. You don't have to do that. But what is important is to take frequent breaks. It's worth so much more than long vacations. Research has shown that if you take on average a long weekend every 6 weeks, so we're talking say a Friday, so you have an extra long weekend, that is much more beneficial than long vacations are. It doesn't mean you shouldn't take long vacations. If you can do it, great. But every 6 weeks, a Friday off gives you by far the most health benefits. And that is also partially, it's less stress-inducing because these little vacations, while you're not packing and you have kids, you don't get mom and dad and everybody's screaming, you don't have any of that. And you can tell I have 5 kids. But what's going on with the long weekend is you tend to get things done because you don't have time to go to Florida or this or that. So that shed, the mess in the shed that's been bothering you, you get it cleaned up. It's one less thing on your mind, less stress, and all these little things you keep up with in life instead of accumulating them. So it's really important. But you know, I personally think it's also very important to do that within a day. And you have to go with your personality. Everybody's personality is really different. Some people need to be very steady, plodding along, getting things done, and others are just into throw me into the maelstrom, and I love it. I'm one of those. But it doesn't mean that you stay in that maelstrom of activity forever. It's a little like white water rafting if you have that personality. White water rafting is an absolute blast. You go through these rapids and you just hang on, and then all of a sudden you come into the calm eddy again. It's kind of anticipating, and there it hits again. And that's, if you have a hyper personality, that's how it should be within your day. Yeah. So start your day with quiet contemplation, planning, prayer, reading the Bible. Please pay attention to what you're eating. Okay, that's really, really important because there's so much mindless eating out there. Sometime I want you to take a raisin, spend 15 minutes eating it. I'm serious. I want you to take that raisin and just look at it, feel the texture. Yeah, just do it to your ears. Texture. That's weird. Where did that sound come from? Where does this raisin come from? Smell it. Yeah? Just look at it again, interesting texture, hold it up to the light. Put it in your mouth. Don't bite down on it. Just move it around with your tongue and see what it feels like texture-wise. That one raisin. And just do that for a while and watch how your saliva starts breaking it up. Look at what happens when you put it in your mouth. All of a sudden, you start salivating. Your body is getting ready for digestion. Amylase is being secreted. Yeah? At the same time, hydrochloric acid is starting to be secreted in your stomach. Then move it to one side of your mouth and bite down on it. Just bite. Don't chew. Bite. And just feel that explosion of texture and smell and taste just flooding your system. And feel what it does here. Just feel it. I'll bet you've never been aware of it. But things start happening down here, contracting actually, getting ready for food. And then move it to the other mouth and chew it a little bit more. And spend 15 minutes doing this. Swallow. You've just completed the awareness experiment here. Because aren't we all just mindlessly shoving things in, and like Dr. Stacy was saying, just overfilling ourselves because we're not even aware. We're looking at the internet, looking at some TV show, reading the paper. It's not good. It is not good. You know the difference between the English and the French? Their food is actually remarkably similar. The English are a little bit boring and the French are a little more adventurous. They drink a lot more wine and the British drink more hard spirits. but the weight difference and health difference is immense between the British and the French. And why is that?
The French have smaller food portions.
They have smaller food portions, but the ultimate calorie count is actually the same. You're right in a way. They have a lot of variety, a lot of dishes, and their mealtime is an event. It is an event. It's the time to gather together and catch up with your family and catch up on the gossip and discuss the politics. And an average French meal at night lasts 2 hours. How long does yours last? Yeah? So, huge difference. Huge difference. And so, do this experiment thing at some point and become aware. Do not do the eating without being aware of it. So, I'll go for it.
The next one is move. They find ways to move mindlessly, whether that means that they have to ride a bike, to go to work, go see friends, you know, whatever it is, it's not an effort. And one of his biggest things in the book is, if you don't like to go to the gym, don't make yourself go, because you're going to resent it every time you're there. That's not healthy. Find other ways to incorporate movement in your life. One of the easiest ones that we don't think about is park as far away as you can and walk. That's not that tough. Yeah, it's cold. Just walk in a little bit. You'll walk faster, you'll get your cardiovascular health up. No big deal. And this is what they do every day. One of the biggest things that you find in every single culture is they garden. Garden is very healthy. You get down, you bend, you pull stuff, you get back up, you move stuff around. And it's just going through every single motion that the body has to offer. Belong. Create a healthy social network. This one's really touchy for some people because we all have that person in our life that seems to be that negative, drag me down, nothing's good, today was terrible, I hate my job, I hate my life, my car doesn't run. You know, they have everything wrong. They can't find one good thing about the day. When you create a healthy social network, you create what you want in your life. So if you have more negative friends than positive people that you hang out with, your life is going to tend to be drawn more into the negative side. We're going to see all the negative aspects of our lives instead of the positive. A lot of times I'll remind patients, you know, look in the mirror every morning and tell yourself 5 things that you really appreciate about yourself today or about the day. What are you looking forward to? What's positive? And start there. If you start your day out positive, you're more likely to end the day positive, and there'll be fewer bumps in between. Your tribe. Make family a priority. And all of these areas, family was very, very closely in relation to geographic where they're at. In Loma Linda, California, they're Seventh-day Adventists. So everybody's around, they're very vegetarian, not a lot of meat, no coffee, right?
No wine.
Yep.
No cigarettes.
Exactly, all of those things, but family was right there. Everybody was close. So, and that making family a priority, what the author was talking about, is he's talking about, you know, once a week, whenever you can, get together with family and really just get to reconnect and talk. If you don't have family around you, make a different family. You know, it doesn't hurt to say, well, I'm your second daughter. You know, that's what I tell everybody. I'm your second daughter, don't worry. You know, so I have lots of families. I'm quite happy to say that. You know, my family lives in Florida, but I have 4 or 5 down here. You know, but that's just part of making family a priority for me because it's important in my life. Anything else?
The thing about Loma Linda, California, which of course strikes home, is it's right here in the U.S. And here we have all these centenarians, a very large community, and they do incredibly well. The one thing that was also attributed to their long life and their vigor and their vitality, besides being mostly vegetarian, and an interesting breakdown was done in this study, and it's called a Hale study. And the Hale study showed that they tried to break down the different factors, which is really hard to do. This is a really long, ongoing study. Mostly Seventh-day Adventists, but not all of them. And they found that becoming a partial vegetarian added 2 years of life on average, but it extended functional life tremendously. Becoming a total vegetarian was more like 4 years. Becoming a vegan, which means no animal products, 7 years. And it just went down the list. And it got to the point that it went over a decade and almost 15 years of functional life. Folks, that means the difference between burning out at 65 versus 80. Yeah? And it's not just about this extension, it's also about the here and now. Yeah? It's about the here and now. Much higher energy. Able to do what you want to do. Play with the kids after work instead of sitting there kicking back and ruining your social network by letting the news and all this negativity be your social network. How bad is that? Letting them influence your life and your moods. I have a proposition to make. How about if you take a little bit of time off through the year instead of big vacations? How about eating more plants? How about looking at labels and not really buying anything that has large labels on it? Be suspicious of all packages. How about spending time with your family and insisting that they actually eat together? Instead of we're eating together, but really everybody's got their own little thing going and everybody's in the kitchen running back and forth, and really the actual time that everybody's sitting down together is not really there, even though they're eating together. How about making a Sabbath truly a Sabbath so you have some off time? Just a ramp down time. That was one of the secrets in Loma Linda. Their Sabbath is a Sabbath. They shut down the computers. They shut down their TVs. And they get together in the social network in their church afterwards and just, they're together. Yeah? I'm not saying I'm not telling you to become a Seventh-day Adventist. I'm not saying that. I'm saying just learn from what they do. Yeah? And how about you go to bed on time? It's huge. We didn't hit that one. But sleep is huge for regeneration of health. It's absolutely huge. You miss 1 hour of sleep at night, and your immune system is down by 30%. And when your immune system is chronically down, you will develop an autoimmune disorder. Yeah? How about we do what Dr. Stacy said and start out the day right? Instead of just mindlessly looking at the paper or something when eating, why don't we just spend our day, our breakfast with quiet contemplation, giving thanks for things that we should be giving thanks for? What a positive emotion that is. What a huge emotion that is, to just give thanks. If you're mad, there's plenty to find fault. I know that. But giving thanks is a very powerful emotion, and I think required of us. So, and making your tribe your priority. And that doesn't mean just your family, that means your church, it means your school, the PTA, all those things that go on around us. And this is all basic, common sense stuff that translate into those incredible complex pathways that we talked about. And yes, will ultimately affect your metabolic syndrome, your autoimmune disorders, and ultimately is going to prevent Alzheimer's and will help you live a rich and productive life like God intended us to. God has really given us the tools to do these things. Let's grab them and utilize them. It's wrong not to. And it is not difficult. It's not magic. We've tried to incorporate these things, all these things, in our lifestyle therapy, which we've been doing for 15 years now. And I'm immensely pleased with lifestyle therapy because that is what we're doing. We're giving therapy for life. We're not just pushing this or pushing that. No, we're trying to push the buttons in your life wherever they're lacking, and whichever buttons we feel you can tackle. If somebody's totally overwhelmed, well, we just start, well, why don't we at least get breakfast right? And let's do this and this and this. Well, I don't have time to exercise. Let's start at 6 and I end at 11. Challenging? Sure. We can work with it. In lifestyle therapy, Tina and Leah will work through doctor's direction and make it happen to you. In fact, we believe so strongly in it and we see so much positive effects of it, with cholesterol coming down, blood pressure coming down, autoimmune diseases fading, moods improving, and patients just changing in physical appearance, that we are going to make it a requirement of new patients that they do this. It's part of what we are here at DBC. It's part of what we do, and we want to be part of changing lives. So that's where we're going in lifestyle therapy, because we believe strongly in this, and you too can apply it. And it just applies some of these principles that we're doing. Is this the last slide?
Yep.
The ultimate spring cleaning. Yes. We're going to get into exercise. We're going to get into farmers market shopping and how to utilize it. What should you do with that freezer I want you to buy and put in the garage? What should you put in there? It will save you tremendous time and money. Which foods, and I'm going to cover about 20 of them, can you get for just $1 or less? Which is very good for you. How can you actually be this way and save a tremendous amount of money on your health budget, on your food budget? We're going to cover that with the Ultimate Spring Cleaning, and sign up if you want to be there for it. We also have cooking classes. When's the next one?
June.
June. Oh, that's a long ways away.
I know.
Okay, but our cooking classes are gluten and dairy free, and they get demonstrated right here. It's very useful and applicable. Or what are we going to do? At the farmers market kind of stuff?
We haven't decided yet. We haven't decided.
Maybe. All right.
To be announced.
To be announced. So anything that you need help with as far as incorporating these changes in your life, talk to Tina or Leah as far as how we do it. It's a fascinating program, and we thoroughly enjoy doing it. Thanks for coming tonight. I appreciate your rapt attention. And we will see you next time to continue this journey and the very new information that's out there. I think you'll enjoy it. Thanks.